Hello, viewers, and welcome to another edition of the book review blog. I am your book reviewer, and today we are going to review the book Oliver Twist. There we go. It's kind of a fat book. And it was written, of course, by Charles Dickens, and it's about a little boy named Oliver who was born in not kind of a very good circumstances. His mother was giving birth and had to be rushed to kind of a poor house, kind of like a nunnery type thing, and so the people, and she died giving birth, and the people took care of little Oliver until he was 9 years old, and then he was taken by the beadle of the nunnery. Kind of a beadle is a parochial worker for a church, and the beadle's name was Mr. Bumble, and he was taken into a workhouse, and he was forced to work, and then in the workhouse he was treated very badly, and with a whole bunch of little boys, and there's a special famous scene where they're eating dinner and they're not fed very much, and what they do is it's called casting lots, but I imagine it's something like drawing straws in his case, to see, okay, you're going to go up and ask for more food, and so the short straw, I guess if you want to call it, lands on Oliver, and so it's the ever famous phrase and quote from the book, "Please, sir, I'd like some more." And he's denied this, and he's reprimanded for asking for more food because, again, this workhouse is very mean. And so the Mr. Bumble and the other heads of this workhouse decide that he is going to be sold and into work as an apprenticeship. And he goes to one place, and he doesn't like the place. I forget where it is, I'm sorry. But the place that he does end up going to is to be an apprentice for an undertaker whose name is Mr. Sowerberry. And he has a wife named Mrs. Sowerberry. And they have also apprenticed to other people. The boy is named Noah Claypole, and the girl is just named Charlotte. I don't think they give a last name for her, but nevertheless, he works there. He likes the owner, the Mr. Sowerberry, but he doesn't like his wife or Noah or Charlotte. And there's an instance where Noah is kind of boating him and baiting him to see what the heck Oliver is going to do, and Noah takes a step too far and mentions Oliver's mother, and says how that she was a whore and that she was a slut and a prostitute, and so this makes Oliver very angry because he never knew his mother, so he starts to hit Noah and pokes a fight with him, and kind of pokes a fight with Charlotte and Mrs. Sowerberry, and he's locked in a room until Mr. Sowerberry gets home, but he ends up escaping, and he starts to run, and he runs to London, where he's met by a very interesting character named Jack Dawkins, but the book knows him better as the Artful Dodger, and Jack, or Artful Dodger, takes him into his kind of world, of kind of underground world, where he meets the head of this underground chain or workplace named Fagin, and they meet other characters, where there's the Artful Dodger, and there's a character named Charlie Bates, who half the time he's known as Charlie, but other times he's known as the rather unfortunate name of Master Bates, which is just kind of funny. And he's also known, there's a woman there of Nancy, who she meets, and she's a prostitute. And what it is it's a ring of, they're pickpockets. And so most of the things they pickpocket, I didn't understand, because most of the things they pickpocket are like scarves. and like handkerchiefs that men wear, but I assume then they go and like sell them and make a profit. So they do take Oliver with them on one occasion. It's Oliver, the Artful Dodger, and Charlie Bates go to, and they just pick a random guy, and Oliver, since this is his first time, is kind of like the lookout man. But it does go wrong. The man that they are pickpocketing is, I think, in front of a bookstore, and the bookstore owner sees them and catches them, and so Jack and Charlie get away, but Oliver is caught because he's small and slow, and so he is brought into the court, and he's tried, but the bookstore owner and the actual guy who they tried to pickpocket go and speak on his behalf, and the victim, I guess, or the supposed victim, is a guy by the name of Mr. Barlow, and he speaks very highly of Oliver and was like, he really wasn't involved. It was more like these people, and so this Mr. Barlow takes Oliver into his home and takes care of him, and he's a very nice man, and Oliver is very happy because he's never really had this kind of manners to him, and they take very good care of him, as I said. So he stays with them for a little while, and then Mr. Barlow sends him on an errand to either go return books or go take books back, maybe to the bookshop that he was, where they met. But then he is taken again by the Artful Dodger and Charlie and Nancy. He's found, and they take him back to Fagin, and he's very unhappy about this because, again, Mr. Barlow was treating him so nicely, but Oliver is kind of like one of the people that, because he's so weak and so small, that he kind of goes along with them, and he tries to fight, but he's unable to fight back. So he's taken to Fagin, and he lives there. He doesn't go on any more pickpocketing. He just kind of lives there. And through the book, you're noticing that Fagin is not a good guy, especially because he's running this pickpocketing ring, but also that you notice that he's trying to figure something out, or he's trying to devise this plan. And if you are familiar with I had other things in mind, like other literary works, like I had Les Miserables in my head, which it doesn't take place in London, it takes place in France, but to me, Fagin kind of represents Mr. Thénardier, where he's just not a nice guy at all and just wants to get money and get quick a buck and rob a lot of people. So Fagin devises a plan with another character named Bill Sykes, who is almost worse than Fagin. He is not a very nice guy, not a very good character. They devise a plan to take Oliver with them and go rob this house. And so Bill and Oliver go and rob this house, and of course it's a failure because it just happens that things are failures in this book, as of that sort. And again, because Oliver is very young and very small and very weak, he is left, but Bill and Oliver go together, and they kind of run into a ditch to avoid policemen and people that are after them, but Bill leaves Oliver behind, and Oliver is now in this ditch where just like Mr. Barlow, who was a victim in the pickpocketing ring, the owners of the house that they are robbing find Oliver and take him in. These are a woman by the name of Rose Fleming, and her boyfriend is a man named Harry Melee, and his mother, Mrs. Melee. They all live in this house and that they tried to rob, but they do take Oliver in, And they are also, like Mr. Barlow, very kind to Oliver, and he likes his place and likes his new surroundings. And that's kind of where Oliver stays. He doesn't go back with Fagin anymore in the book, but that's not where the book ends. The book ends where you kind of learn a little more of what happens to all of the characters in like Fagin's world. You know what happens to Fagin. Not very good things happen to him. Bill Sykes is kind of a lover of Nancy in Fagin's group, but Nancy is kind of, I guess, like Eponine in a way, where she's kind of working both sides, not for a love of anybody, but she meets Rose and Harry and Mrs. Melee, and she is kind of a go-between between them. It's like telling what Fagin does, and because Oliver has told the Rose, Harry, and Mrs. Melee what an awful man Fagin is. And Nancy is kind of caught by Fagin, actually. Well, Fagin employs Noah Claypole. He comes back, and he's like, Nancy's up to no good. We need you to go and look and see what she's doing. So Noah goes and sees her with them, and so Bill takes matters into his own hands and actually kills Nancy. It's a very graphic scene, very visual, but very graphic scene in the book. But then Bill is found to be the murderer of Nancy, and he is going to go to court, but he takes matters in his own hands, and it's unknown if it's intentional or not. He's trying to escape by wrapping like a rope around himself, but the rope gets caught in a chimney, and the rope isn't around his body, it's around his neck, so it actually, he hangs himself that way. I thought that was kind of interesting. But Charlie Bates is not found guilty. He just kind of lives his life. The Artful Dodger has pickpocketed again, and he is caught, and he's tried, and I don't think he's killed. I think he just spends his life in prison. So I liked it. It was a good book. It was rather depressing, because if you've read Charles Dickens, they're kind of depressing. So, but I liked it. I'm glad I was able to read it. And my next book that I'm also going to read is a kind of a different genre than one I've read. It is a book called Crank, and I'm going to show you. It's by a woman named Ellen Hopkins, and if you notice the thickness, this is a book of poetry, and here's like a good page. And so it's very thick, but there's not a lot of words on the page. I have read this book before, and I enjoyed it a lot, so I'm going to read it again and do a review. So that is it. I bid you all a good farewell, and happy reading.